Developing Emotional Intelligence with Stoicism. The research conducted by Professors Salovey and Mayer at Yale was picked up by Dan Goleman and popularized through his well-known book in the early 1990s. This was the beginning of the current era of emotional intelligence, both as a field of study and as a skill that is utilized in the workplace. It is possible to find the practice of self-regulation and the evaluation of emotions, appetites, and other aspects of one's life in a variety of civilizations and in a variety of specific times. One may argue that the unusual effects that the 20th century had on the idea of emotional intelligence had as much to do with measuring as they do with anything else. A concept that is comparable to emotional intelligence was held by the Stoics, just as it was held by other people in different locations and eras. This concept refers to the capacity of a human being to manage their emotional responses not just to the external world, but also to the world within themselves. When we meet again, we will discuss the concept of first movements, which refers to an instinctive reaction to the perception of injury or benefit that is triggered by the shock of an event on our senses. Because the Stoics' understanding of emotions is extremely different from what I see in mainstream Western culture, this may be the best place to begin after all. It is the first movement after all, right? However, we may first come to an understanding of what emotions are for the Stoics. The emotions that we are discussing today are, according to the Stoics, judgments about things. These judgments require a mental assent or agreement to what our perception appears to be telling us about anything that is either in our inner or outward worlds. The question, why are we intellectualizing emotions, is typically the one that causes people to become annoyed. I just want to feel for myself without being judged. Do not forget to return for our subsequent edition if you have that thought. However, it is of the utmost importance that we reach a consensus on this matter, as we are not in charge of anything other than our judgments to begin with. For this reason, to appreciate the concept of moral growth, which was discussed in the last issue, or any kind of moral responsibility that we might have for the behaviors that are unavoidably the result of our emotional responses, we need to comprehend that at least a portion of our emotional experience of the world is under our control. The distinction between the first movements I discussed and these judgment emotions is the acquiescence to or agreement with what our perception is telling us about an occurrence. This is the dividing line. It's possible that the language that Stoics employ could be of some use. In the Stoic philosophy, this particular kind of feeling is referred to as apatheia, which means things we experience, or eupatheia, which means things we experience well. There is a connection between the root and the word passion in the English language. Patheia may be broken down into four primary categories: pleasure, desire, pain, and fear. Eupatheia can be broken down into three primary categories: joy, volition, and caution. Some Stoics believe that these categories can be further subdivided. We can make use of the fundamental sorts: the belief in unexamined or unreasonable judgment, that what we are currently experiencing is something that we ought to be ecstatic about, is what we mean when we talk about pleasure. The belief that we ought to seek something that we are not currently experiencing is precisely what we mean when we talk about desire. In a similar vein, what we mean when we talk about pain is the belief that what we are going through right now is something that we ought to be very upset about. The feeling that something that we are not currently experiencing is something that we should want to avoid is what we refer to as fear. Every patheia is unreasonable because it is a judgment that is made without appropriate perception and investigation. You should probably be able to see why Stoicism is given such a poor reputation at this point. In conclusion, if you are unable to be certain about your perceptions and evaluations, and who can be sure about those things, really? The majority of your feelings are morally dangerous. How come? Mainly because such things frequently motivate us to take action. Being morally upright at all times is the objective of the Stoic, who strives to live their life by virtue. Therefore, it is necessary to investigate the foundation upon which all of our judgments about how we are feeling are based as thoroughly as possible. Without a doubt, this is on the verge of being pathological and comes with its own set of challenges. For example, how can we be sure that we are correct? However, I am not advocating that you begin to analyze everything that you go through on your own. Stoics do not consider several of the phenomena that we refer to as emotions to be pathetic. But both you and I, if we are being completely honest, are aware, on a profound level, that the Stoics were onto something. What is the frequency with which you have experienced an emotional response to anything, only to later reflect on it and realize that you have overlooked a significant aspect of the situation? What is the frequency with which you have allowed yourself to change your perspective after becoming angry at someone or something? How often have you done anything that was prompted by some type of pleasure, misery, desire, or fear, and then almost immediately or ultimately realized that you were completely incorrect about what you did? Is this getting to be perfect? I do not believe that to be the case. On the other hand, there is not a single thing that might be considered erroneous with the fundamental concept. We experience the world through our perceptions and judgments regarding interactions, events, or our thoughts. This holds for the emotional experience that we have as well. Therefore, what are some options available to us if we are unable to rely on our original feelings as being correct or valid? Avoid becoming the stereotypical Stoic who is characterized as being closed off and overly rational. Instead, cultivate an interest in what you are experiencing, the reasons behind those feelings, and the impact those feelings may have on the activities you choose. That is to say, make it a Stoic attitude rather than a Stoic one. This is the point where the ancient Stoic philosophy and the contemporary development of emotional intelligence meet. In the complicated workplaces that we have, we need to make it possible for individuals to recognize and appreciate the full spectrum of human emotional experience. As it relates to their work, no one criticizes feelings and manifestations of accomplishment and success. We can implement straightforward methods and abilities to cultivate a more emotionally healthy culture on both the individual and organizational levels. We can develop a common understanding and vocabulary to explain the experience of working in the workplace. We can treat one another with great respect, thereby establishing human-centered workplaces that respect the variety of experiences that shape our reactions to events and systems. However, we also need to take the time to build the skills and procedures that will assist us in managing our work experience in a manner that is reasonable, predictable, and productive. What kinds of changes would you see in your life or your company if you could cut in half the negative effects that result from making poor judgments that are tied to sentiment? Just give it some thought. What's more, as was mentioned earlier, it all comes down to these two questions. In your opinion, what exactly is an emotion? What do you believe is under your control? If you are unable to even begin to attempt to answer these questions, you will not be able to begin to improve your career or your quality of life. Enjoyed the Royal Insights? Like this video, subscribe for more luxury updates, and comment your favorite royal fact. Thanks for watching.